Firstly, as we are in the season of the school year is ending, we're all aware the graduation ceremonies or the school leaving ceremonies have started. And as such, I would like to, at this time, take the opportunity to express my congratulatory remarks to all students who have completed a level of education. I would like us as a community to recognize and applaud them, but also to encourage them to never stop learning, to become lifelong learners. I've already attended the first at an elementary school, and so I would like to, we are not having the public school ceremony as one joint ceremony any longer, giving the schools the opportunity to host their own school leaving exercises in a way that is more personal, gives a personal touch for the school, parents and students and staff to be able to recognize the achievements of the students. As I mentioned in the last press briefing that I attended, that we did get the results island-wide, that it is being analyzed and discussed, but the Division of Exams is also highlights who the top students are, etc., and an award ceremony for the top students of the country will be taking place also towards the end of the month or the beginning of July. As government, I have also pledged to award the top students of each of the elementary schools, but the particulars of how that will take place still has to be finalized. So we are trying to create incentives for our students to continue to excel. We have been highlighting throughout the year the positive attributes under the Education on the Move, with be it sports, be it arts, wherever we catch our students doing well. As a matter of fact, on Sunday last, I attended the Dow's Musical Foundation Pan Fiesta in the Carnival Village, which was basically a recital of all the school groups that he has been working with. And I must commend Mr. Isidore York and his team on a job well done. We saw beginning levels, we saw intermediate, and of course the students that go to him in the afternoon sessions also. So it is these types of initiatives that we hope to be able to promote further in having our culture and heritage promoted, in having music and arts and sports play a larger role within the lives of our children. And of course, funding always remains a problem with that, and creativity is always at the top of the agenda in how to make it possible, because there are always more requests than we can handle. And in putting forward our initiatives as a government to have more accountability and to utilize our budgets more effective and efficient, together with the Ministry of TIAT, we have been looking at ways to streamline also the school busing budget. And I know that that has come up several times. And so we are at a point now where we have made assessments of the service being provided. We have had several legal advices from Legal Affairs as it pertains to the way forward in putting more structure in the service that is being provided, while remembering that the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports is charged with the transportation of children who otherwise would not be able to get to school. So we've been doing it, island-wide, free of charge for parents, as you can say, being paid by the taxpayers' dollars, under a system where we have had very little accountability and regulation. So in our efforts to stimulate more accountability, more efficiency, we are, together with the Ministry of TIAT, looking to tighten our policies, looking to tighten our, as they say, the LBHAM that was necessary to define exactly who those students are, as we have already anticipated this last year, and the budget is already much smaller. So we are already running into serious issues, and so several changes can be expected, because as a ministry, we have to choose how we're going to spend our funds. And I would really much prefer, as a ministry, to spend the money to promote education, to have the necessary programs for special needs learners in place. We have several innovations starting this year, more after-school programs under, as part of our plan. But if we then have to divert those funds to be able to pay for school busing, which we cannot guarantee is taking place, then I consider that a colossal waste of money. So in the weeks to come, we will definitely be informing the operators who have so far been carrying out this service, some of the changes that are to come, as well as the schools and parents, because I believe as parents, I myself, my child used the bus, and I can afford to pay. So we need to analyze as a community who needs to use the bus based on governmental support as pertains to who can afford to use the bus and can contribute to that out of pocket. So this is how we're trying to address this situation without, as they would say, upsetting the apple cart too much. But I think you have to give Jack his jacket, and if we are overpaying for a service, it has to be addressed. Change is not easy, but if we decide we are going to improve on our services and utilize our funds in a more efficient and effective manner, these are the things that, as a ministry and as a government, we have taken decisions to move forward with. As it pertains to continue with sports and highlighting positive actions, for the second year in a row, the Walichi Women's Soccer Association is hosting an international competition with teams from Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, and we are also pleased that we were able to give some assistance in this. And the teams will be visiting St. Martin to compete against our own St. Martin team, the Walichi Women's Soccer Team. This will take place from the 23rd to the 25th of June at the Raul Lillich Sports Complex, and opening is set to start at 7 p.m. this Friday. So I do encourage the general public to come out and support these endeavors and support our local teams, of course. We do have a large, of course, Aruba and Bonaire and Curacao society here, so I'm sure they will be out. So let them not be greater in numbers than us as St. Martin supporters. The UNESCO office, the SG UNESCO of the Netherlands, NATCOM for UNESCO, is visiting the Dutch Caribbean islands and will be in St. Martin also on June 23rd, this Friday. At the meeting, I will be meeting with her, and this will take place as it relates to the past year in relations to education, culture, and other areas where UNESCO, what assistance support St. Martin has received from UNESCO, and whether technical assistance, capacity development, funding, etc., can be collaborated on. So this discussion will hopefully gear towards possible collaborative efforts that the Netherlands NATCOM for UNESCO and our NATCOM here on St. Martin for UNESCO that's the National Commission, can do together for the next year and onwards. So it's more of a planning and collaborative meeting. The youth department every year has, and it's also a fixed budget on our yearly budget, the BOP program, Business and Outreach Program, which is a summer program catered towards our students being able to get internships in and out of government. So they will have workshops for the students who have been qualified, and 3 days of workshops will commence from today, Wednesday, June 21st, at the University of St. Martin at 2 p.m. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the stakeholders who contribute, and the businesses, to making the BOP program possible. Of course, government subsidizes that program, but it would not be possible without willing businesses and other stakeholders to employ the students, guide the students, etc. And I wish the students much success, and that they would take this time to utilize it as a means of getting a foot in the door if they are towards the end of their studies, or to see and explore opportunities for work in their futures. As St. Martin is celebrating on July 1st Emancipation Day, it's on a Saturday, and the theme that we've chosen is Breaking the Silence for our part of the celebration. And in the afternoon session, which is hosted by Voices, it will be under the theme of family and family legacy. This day will consist of a church service, laying of wreaths at various historical locations, including a performance ceremony leading up to a parade to the Emilia Wilson Park, where the manifestation there, cultural manifestation there, will start at 3 p.m. and last until 6 p.m. The general public, of course, is cordially invited to celebrate Emancipation Day with us. We've had several. I must commend the University of St. Martin. They had a guest lecturer, Dr. Weiner, here 2 weeks ago, where the discussion was on decolonizing our education system. And I throw it out there that we need to look at decolonizing a lot more than our education system. And I think Emancipation Day would be an excellent day to really get that going. So I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to any questions you may have.
You know, since recently we made a statement about water, I've been getting a number of phone calls through the ministry, and obviously there's some confusion out in the public. So I thought it would be good to try and recap and give a little bit more clarity, I hope, on the situation. Number one, the inspectorate last night issued a press release. I think some of you have seen it already, announcing that they would be intensifying their supervision of drinking water. And again, that's a release that the media should have already. So there's some points that I'm going to touch on and perhaps elaborate on a little bit. So, you know, for the public information, the water that is distributed via GB is water that's produced by a process called reverse osmosis. This is a process where seawater is taken in and goes through a process, and drinking water is produced. This is done by a company called Seven Seas. When Seven Seas produces this water, it then goes via the distribution system. The distribution system is the responsibility of GB. So it goes through a distribution system, it's stored in one of the numerous tanks you see around the island, and then from those tanks distributed to businesses and residents on the island. There's legislation that's in place that governs the drinking water quality, more specifically the National Drink Water Ordinance and the National Decree containing general measures on the quality of drinking water. So there is legislation that's very specific about how the drinking water is maintained. And as Ministry of VSA, my job is to make sure that the quality of the water is safe for our people. And I want to reiterate, through all of this process, the drinking water is safe to drink. I've gotten a number of questions, you know, is the drinking water safe to drink? Yes, it is. But again, we're obligated to comply with the law, and we're obligated to ensure that the players in the system comply with the law. And those are the different stakeholders, as I just mentioned, Seven Seas, GB, and other distributors of water. In the drinking ordinance, there's 64 parameters. So in other words, there's 64 specifications for the quality of water that if you comply with these 64 points, we would consider the water to be in compliance with the law and safe to drink. Some of those parameters are checked on different frequencies, but out of those, 15 parameters are checked on a daily basis. So again, I want to reassure the public that the water is being checked every day to ensure that it's safe to drink. If the inspectorate has any indications that the water has for some reason become unsafe to drink, a public notification will go out explaining to the public what's happened and what they should do as precautions. And that is not the case. That is not the case. So these 15 parameters include microbiology, so in other words, if there's bacteria in the water, physical characteristics of the water, in other words, pressure, pH. So pH is an indication as to whether the water is acidic or alkaline, so it refers to chemical properties of the water, and also looks at, for example, the chlorine levels. So the bacteria, there are guidelines in the specifications that outline what are acceptable levels of bacteria in the water. Every person has bacteria within their body. Within your own intestines, there's bacteria. Not all bacteria is harmful, so there's harmful bacteria and there's non-harmful or non-pathogenic bacteria. So, but again, these are specified within law as to what the limits are. In some of the recent inspections, we found that some of the counts were above the limits as prescribed by law. In addition to that, we found that the chlorine levels were sometimes not within the limits, and towards the low end. In other words, there was no chlorine or too low levels of chlorine. Now, why is this important? Because, and people say, I didn't know there was chlorine in the water. Again, it's specified in the law because chlorine is a sanitizer. Chlorine is what makes sure that the bacteria counts within the water are safe, and in low levels is perfectly acceptable. So we want to ensure there's not high levels of chlorine, but in our investigations, what we found is that the levels of chlorine were too low. What we found in addition is that the pH, which again I explained is about the acidity or alkalinity of the water, was too high. And although a high pH is not necessarily a health hazard, what it does create is the water with high pH makes it harder to maintain proper levels of chlorine. It impacts the levels of chlorine. So although it's not a health concern, it's a concern to the ministry because it makes it very difficult to regulate the levels of chlorine within the water. So the inspectorate has announced, and I'm fully supportive of that, we've had meetings with GB. Actually, we have a meeting planned with 7Cs for later in the week, because as I mentioned, there's different stakeholders in this process, and we need to review to be very clear about who has what responsibilities, where the responsibility stops. So for example, there's some indications to believe that already from the production, there's levels of pH which are already starting on a high level. So what is the acceptable parameters? And really more importantly is how do we solve the problem? So everybody's on board in terms of how do we make sure that all the parameters are being adhered to. In addition, for example, discussions with GB. As you know, sometimes there's breaks in the water lines. So when the water lines are opened and repaired, there should be a protocol in place for after the repair, how do they sanitize the line to make sure that nothing got in, because it's a closed system. Our water distribution system's a closed system. So if you cut the line, open it to make repairs, it's possible that debris enters the lines. How do we make sure that that debris has been properly flushed out and the lines have been properly cleaned? So there's certain protocols that we need to make sure that are in place and being adhered to. So again, I want to reassure the public the drinking water is safe. This really is a matter of all of the stakeholders cooperating and being proactive and making sure that no problems do evolve. And I'd like to thank also the Minister of Romy. We have very good collaboration, working together to ensure that the health of the population is well protected. Thank you very much.
Bibi Hodge Shaw, SMN News Online. Good morning. You have the floor.
Good morning, Cedric. Good morning, ministers. Minister Jacob, can you tell us, because you mentioned the situation with the school buses and all the hiccups. I know this have been going on way before, since last year, and there were some issues. Can you tell us if a decision has been taken to implement a fee, a school bus fee? If so, how much? And how many buses, school buses, do we really have on the island?
Okay, no fees have been implemented as such. What has been done is that the departments for transportation and the Department of Education and Inspection that have been dealing with this situation on a yearly basis have been carrying out studies, etc. in the first part of the year. Those studies showed some irregularities that had to be repaired, fixed within invoicing, etc. So that is on the ministry's level. We've also discovered where we have to tweak our LBHAMs within Ministry of Education and within the transportation section of TIAT, where things can be better defined so that the communication about what is, what isn't, what can be done, what can't be done is regulated. In that already we see that we can make some savings. And of course then we have to address the bigger picture, and that we haven't gotten to as yet in terms of how it will be moving forward We do although accept that last year it was a big outcry because there was a discussion about the policy and then the SLAs and the contracts and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we do not want this to be a situation like so many others that is tried in the public sphere without all of the information. So for this reason, and of course the school bus operators have to receive their official information as well. And so we just want to lay the groundwork that this is something that is not off of the table, that it is something that has to be done for accountability purposes. There's a law that has to be upheld for when you are paying out funds in the excess of 5,000 guilders. You have to have a bidding process, you have to have this, you have to have that. But of course, the years of doing it a certain way is what it is. And if we look now at what we're doing, because of ad hoc adding of more and more buses, we have many more buses than are actually needed for the number of students that are registered within the ministry as using the school buses. So we have a list of students that we receive from the schools every year of who's using the bus. So we have a number for how many go to school with the bus, how many return home. And if we do a calculation based on those numbers, it would cost what we budgeted for this year. However, that's not the case. The school busing budget also covers school trips. So in depleting that, because over the years we spent double that and more, in depleting that now by the middle of the year, we have no choice. We have to address the situation. If we do not address the situation, as the Minister of Finance rightfully says, your pie is your pie. And so the piece of pie that is the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, because even though it's something that falls within both ministries in terms of regulation, the financing of it falls only by the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport. So that would mean funds would have to move from programs like after-school programs. It would hurt a lot of other areas for us to be covering what we were covering up to now, and I must say, erroneously, excessively. And I think in our presentations to Parliament during budget last year, it was clearly pointed out, the types of the way it was going. So for the number we are paying per trip, and some of these trips cannot be guaranteed, and some of these trips have maybe a handful of children in them. And this has been proven with assessments that have taken place from January up to now. And so the school buses operators have seen a heightened control effort being taken place by the Ministry of TIAC. Based on our calculations, we need about 40 buses to do what is being done in terms of the students who are using the bus, and there are about 60, I don't want to quote a number and be wrong, but 60 plus buses on the road or being invoicing government, let me see. Yes, did I answer all of your questions? Thank
Thank you very much, Bibi. Hilbert Hart, Today newspaper, you have the floor.
Good morning, Minister Boosman. The General Audit Chamber has seriously criticized your ministry and you personally as well for not cooperating with an audit into the personal expenditures. And there's also been an advice issued to you in February to which you haven't reacted yet. My question is, what's going on there, and are you prepared to publish that advice that you received?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Yes, I read the article in the newspaper and was a bit surprised by it because, first of all, it's normally not the style of the audit chamber of any high council to go to the media and publicize issues that they themselves say it's confidential. So we called them to find out exactly what was going on. There's a clarification to it. First of all, the audit chamber said, look, we are not responsible for what is printed in the newspaper. Okay, so let's state that up front. Secondly, the audit is an audit that took place on the personnel costs of the year 2015. Okay, and matching the actual cost with what was budgeted. And it would seem that it was way out of sync from what was budgeted to what was actually spent and how the processes took place. There are a lot of issues within the ministry as indicated in the report that needed clarification. The report went on to speak about the efforts that the audit chamber made during the year of 2016 to get the involvement of both the ministry and the minister in responding, providing the necessary information for the audit chamber to do its job. The audit chamber was not too happy with the responses and felt that the lack of providing the information hampered them from executing their tasks. Therefore, the statement as in, how you say, I don't know the exact words, but it would be something like infringing on the authority or hampering the authority of the audit chamber, which I would agree with, because the audit chamber has a clear task and all ministries are obliged to comply with that task. That was the period 2016. In 2017, on that particular issue, because the audit chamber did not get the information that they wanted from the ministry, they then went on to a different process. Instead of providing a report, they provided an advice, to which no response was required in that sense. It was not a request from the audit chamber to provide information or anything like that. We checked, we saw nothing came in from the audit chamber in February 2017. And we asked the audit chamber if they can send to us whatever was sent out back then, and please indicate where it was delivered or to whom it was delivered. Apparently in March, indeed, that advice was sent out, and it was delivered by at the Illage Road. And there was some communication, previously the minister sat at the Illage Road, and now I'm in the main building. So apparently that created some how you say? Some confusion where it did not, the report did not reach me on time. We had other reports, we had other items from the audit chamber that did come to us that we responded to. We looked at that report. Everything that is in that, or the advice, everything that is in the advice are some of the things that we have been tackling since January, since I've taken office. And they are not all issues that the general public is aware of or may even not be interested in, considering some of the stuff and the questions and remarks that have been, been in the newspapers. I can give you one example, for instance. The Miss Lally Center, which for everyone is there, is physically there. We do not see the Miss Lally Center as, something that is a problem in any sense, but Miss Lally Center officially doesn't